Welcome to this Planeswalkers guide on Dominaria. This is something that Wizards releases a lot of times when a new set or a new world is explored. But for an old world, they are glad to do this as well. So let's start. They start with explaining that this world has been destroyed before. When things were at their worst, Dominaria was nearly uninhabitable, covered in salt flats, acidic lakes, lightning storms, dust balls and worse. Those who survived did so through ingenuity and spellcraft. Basically, only the strongest survived. Then came the mending, when the damage to Dominaria was healed through the heroic sacrifice of multiple planeswalkers. Vitality flowed back into the land, which recovered with supernatural speed. Ecologies, communities and nations were restored, towns were rebuilt and trade routes re-established. Within decades, Dominaria was healthier than it had been in centuries. Fodalia is a land of natural and architectural beauty, so we're going into every region basically. Vast fields of sun-kissed grain crisscrossed by meandering rivers and dotted with cities of white limestone towers and vivid stained glass being a new addition. One would hardly guess that less than a century ago this great empire was fractured, its people scattered, its shining capital city a salt-choked ruin. Today, the 7 noble houses of Fodalia once again rule one of the most prosperous and powerful nations of Dominaria. The Banalish are keenly aware that their new Fodalia is in its infancy, with 1,000 years of heroic ancestors and tales of bravery to live up to. But they are a proud people also, proud enough to consider themselves equal to the task, to their epic ancestors. Who are they? Well, we learn that through the 7 houses. Fodalia is ruled by a council of 7 noble houses who regularly trade authority in an annual cycle. Each of Fodalia's ruling houses can trace their lineage back to heroes of yore, such as House Capashen, whose heritage stretches from ancient Shieldon nobility to the hero Gerard, who brought about the defeat of the Phyrexian leader Yawgmoth. The Capashens are led by a devout Saren named Aaron Capashen, who is now Phyrexian, father of the daring young knight Danitha Capashen, who killed her father, and Raph Capashen, navigator and ship's mate for a famous flying ship who doesn't know about this all yet. The famous flying ship is called the Weatherlight. Oh, by the way, we see here a stronger version of Danitha, of course, where she brings in an enchantment or an aura or equipment, and equips it to herself. So that's pretty epic. Here we see as well in the art a bit of the stained glass. Church of Serra, gracefully curved towers float in a golden sky, so serene that not even gravity can touch them. They're not flying, they're not floating, they're just so chill that they don't fall. Devout priests sing beautiful songs of veneration. Winged angels fly through the air on their way to bring gentle comfort to the meek and swift justice to the cruel. This is the Church of Serra, a benevolent religion founded to honor the memory and example of its quote-unquote goddess. We see here that the people's faith can hold back endless darkness, as well in the card. And more stained glass. But Serra, the namesake of the church, was not quite a true goddess, but a planeswalker, albeit at a time when the distinction between planeswalkers and gods was largely academic. Interestingly, we see the creation of the thought of a god that wasn't really a god. It was her power as a planeswalker that allowed her to create angels and even an entire angelic world, so in a sense she is a god. An artificial plane known as Serra's realm. Serra died almost 800 years ago when she dispersed her essence into the land of Cersei. That essence still protects the Cathedral of Serra at Cersei, and new angels even appear there occasionally. So even though Serra is long gone, her power to create angels still continues. And look at how happy this guy is. that must be good. We move on to another continent, New Archive. The great island of New Archive is part of the archipelago of Terishare. Along with Yavimaya, Latnam, Almas and Gomini, Terishare was once a continent. But Urza's Silex blast at the end of the... Oh, so it's not a continent. But Urza's Silex blast at the end of the Brothers' War shattered it, carved up by the glaciers during the Ice Age, and finally inundated during the Flood Age. Argivians are a diverse people, for Terishare was settled by many successive waves of immigrants. Humans, dwarves, Kor and Aven all call this place home and are willing to defend it with their lives. And we've seen one of those Kor planeswalkers be a Phyrexian too. The capital city of the nation of New Argive, Argivia, is, in truth, the second city to bear this name. The original city was destroyed by a Phyrexian force hundreds of years ago. They slew every inhabitant, destroyed all the buildings, and, most tragic to a nation of scholars, burned every book but one. The rise and fall of the Thran. Sort of a conqueror gets to choose truth situation. When the Argivians had sufficiently recovered from the horrors of the invasion, they rebuilt their home as the greatest fortification in all of Dominaria. Today, Argivia is surrounded by a system of walls and crenellations, powered by clockwork and power stones, that can move and adapt to meet any conceivable threat from the outside. The Balduvian Steppe, the rich and fertile soil, of which we do not have any art, I believe, we only have the Ice Age art from Balduvia, of the Balduvian Steppe makes the region the breadbasket of New Argive. While most inhabitants of the steppe are farmers or herders, instead of these barbarian people, this humble way of living belies the technological prowess all Argivians possess. Here, even the humblest home usually incorporates at least one power stone shard, which can power tools of the trade, such as blacksmiths' forges, millers' grindstones, or farmers' churns. Argivians are fascinated by history and what ancient artifacts can reveal about how people lived in previous eras. Many archaeologists delight in restoring relics from the Brothers' War and the Phyrexian invasion to working order. So we're going back to those war ages, it seems. Well, we knew that, but I mean like the old ones. Other artificers are more forward-thinking, following in the footsteps of innovators like Urza, Mishra, Thanos and Ashnod, who also wage war, by harnessing the energy stored in power stones. Artificers imbue mechanical simulacra with the semblance of life. Maybe they will create a new Phyrexia. Direct powerful beams of energy and send vehicles soaring through the air. Maybe that's the solution. Make a new Phyrexia, new Phyrexia, and let them fight it out. Maybe. They shouldn't do that. Argivians have restored several ancient Thran constructs to working order, not Garnet, just here for flavor. And ambitious artificers have built novel designs. The coastal city of Backfall is built atop an enormous construct, which can carry the city to safety in the event of a tsunami. Ornithopters, both crewed and autonomous, flit through the skies of New Argive. And there we see a 5-color Thran portal, which is used as a 5-color land that comes in depth sometimes and loses you a life as well, but you can pick your one color from 5, which is the upside. To the mages and scholars of the Tolarian academies, magic is one science among many. Their books contain eldritch runes as well as complex equations, so magic and science. And they employ complex constructs science alongside enchanted golems magic. What happens to tin if you transmute the bronze it contains into iron after smelting, thus introducing an electrical charge enhance the scrying ability of a crystal ball. To the Tolarians, all might end in an explosion. Basically. When he isn't occupied with other matters, the immortal Archmage Jodah can often be found lecturing in one of the Academy's vaulted halls. But there are rumors of secret societies of the Tolarian academics operating in the shadows. The Society of Mishra, malcontented wizards who believed that Mishra was on the right side of the Brothers' War, now are sad that he didn't win. And the Gixians, cultists who worship the Phyrexian demon that almost destroyed Dominaria ages ago and are now sad that they didn't win. These Phyrexian sympathizers believe that the improvement of the body through genetic and artificial modification will lead humanity to its final apotheosis, basically the Phyrexian goal. The chancellors of the Tolarian academies maintain that such rumors are little more than ghost stories though, and not to be given any serious attention. So, the Phyrexians are in power already, is what this is saying. Dominaria is home to many continents and many different species and nations, but most of the world is covered in water. And the vast expanses beneath the white-capped waves belong to the Merfolk, so they are basically the most powerful people. Secretive and proud, they rule the world only through global empire, a federation of tribes and states knit together by trade and common heritage. The center of this society lies in the Foda Sea off the coast of Arona, in the empire known as Fodalia. The Merfolk of Fodalia do not by and large consider anyone on the surface their enemy, which is why they survive probably. Though it is possible for a surface power to harm them, it is difficult, and the Fodalians can retaliate by completely locking down oceanic travel if necessary. At present, the Fodalians charge for safe passage through the seas, but take no sides in the political struggles of the surface. So basically, they have the power to stop their trade and food supply. By contrast, Merfolk have waged bitter, generations-long wars against other subsurface people, most especially the cryptic, gold-loving crustacean race of the Homerids. Well, just trade in the gold seas for the warm seas then. But I guess they don't want to give that space. The island of Urborg is one of the foulest places on the plane. A vast swamp choked with Phyrexian wreckage and dominated by the stronghold, fortress of the slain demon Balzenlog. The earth beneath Urborg is restless as well. Mounds of ash, gas plumes and the occasional volcanic vent dot the landscape. Yet even here there is new life in Dominaria. Or, if not new life precisely, at least life after death. The spirits of the restless dead and the few living people who remain have built a society within the swamps of Urborg that is, in its own way, as vibrant as the rest of the world. Okay. The spirit creatures and few remaining mortals who inhabit Urborg are a weirdly charming bunch. Yeah? Many of them are, in a sense, ordinary folks just trying to make a living in the world. I feel like this is written by a Phyrexian. They have markets and houses, boardwalks and boats. Oh yeah. It just so happens that most of them are dead, weird and a bit creepy. Others though are true swamp horrors. Oh, they are there too. The monsters that go bump under those weird dead people's beds. Okay, so the zombies and the wizards and the half Phyrexians aren't really weird. It's the real monsters that they are afraid of that are weird. And we see a card, Reddit Rabbit of Urborg, who is just a normal person, zombie, a 4-mana 3/3 with vigilance that gives other zombies vigilance. He's just making a society. And whenever other legendary creatures you control die, you resurrect them as a zombie. That's normal too. Hailing from the merciless and barren land of Geld on the far northern continent of Icehaven, the brutal Geldings are hulking. Grey-skinned humans, they are the monsters. Though they are often perceived as a horde of brutish, unthinking barbarians, a threat to civilization in all its forms, they in fact have a deep and rich culture that goes back many centuries, having endured devastation on a massive scale, and lived through their own prophesied apocalyptic judgment. Today's Geldings fight to be worthy of their glorious ancestors. Again, just like with the Banach. Their unforgiving home and their strongest champions. In the wake of both the invasion and the mending, Geld finds itself in a new adolescent stage. A powerful leader, Radha, the granddaughter of a heroic warlord and a sky-shroud elf, is trying to piece together what it means to be a Gelden against the new backdrop of a recovering dominaria. The Coalition, Warlord. So the Coalition is the group of people against the fractions from dominaria. A 4-mana 3/3 with Domain, which means they get an effect for every type of land, or basic land type you control. And this one gives another target creature +X for every basic land type when Radha gets tapped. So you have to attack in as a 3/3 or maybe crew something as a 3/3, and then something else might get up to +5/5, which is strong. Okay. Geld realized it was not invincible and now must find fuel to return the flame of Geld to glory as a modern dominarian power. Interesting, we haven't seen how yet. Baked by volcanic heat and reshaped constantly by geothermal forces, lava, fire, explosions, the isolated island continent of Shiv is known for its dragons, who are utterly at home among its lava flows, eruptions and jagged peaks. Under the shadow of the Shivan dragon's wings lives a variety of mostly reptilian life. They need to be able to withstand the heat, basically. Several tribes of especially crafty goblins and the Gitu, a human culture of nomadic pyromancers and warriors. The Manarich is a massive facility built by ancient Thran. It was originally devised as a prototype powerstone factory and later restored by the artificer Jodah, who has established a workshop there. Jodah knows the inner workings of the Manarich better than anyone else on Dominaria, and if pressed, would surely use it to create artifacts of extraordinary power. But she doesn't want to, maybe, but they did use this as their battlefield against the fraction system. And the scrying is something that Jodah does a lot as well, or at least her owl does. And she can use it to make power stones just like Karn can make them out of thin air. Lenoir. Few outsiders dare to venture into the vast and ancient Lenoir forests, where huge old growth trees tower 1,000 feet into the air. Among the trees live the fierce Lenoir elves. Here another one that makes mana, of course, as well, as all Lenoir elves do. Whose appearance of savagery and reputation for xenophobic hostility are enough to keep most intruders away from even the shadows of the forest. But the reality is that the Lenoir are a reclusive people, and careful visitors can enter and leave the forest without ever seeing its inhabitants. Oh, they're more afraid of you than you are of them. When the Lenoir elves are seen, it is because they wish to be seen, often to the dismay of the trespassers. They are not ugly, so there must be something else. Maybe this. Kavu are reptilian creatures that are either very ancient or a relatively recent creation on Dominaria. So they were away for a long time. They first appeared during the Phyrexian invasion centuries ago, suddenly introduced to the plane's ecosystem at a time when all nature on Dominaria was threatened. The Phyrexians found the creatures a far more difficult opponent than much of the plane's other wildlife. Maybe they weren't prepared for it. Now the Lenoir elves breed them to fill a variety of roles, believing that the Kavu were the goddess Gaia's means of intervening in Dominaria's defense. The close relationship between elves and Kavu is a constant reminder of Gaia's beneficence. But one of them has been completed, I saw in a card, so that is really significant then. The island of Yavimaya is beautiful but entirely unwelcoming to human life, in contrast to the Lenoir place. Its scale is tremendous, with ancient trees towering 3,000 feet tall. The ground is choked with shifting roots, making it almost impossible to walk on the forest floor. Nothing here is built or constructed. Everything needed is grown or evolved, as directed by the will of the forest. The forest teems with life, but every individual plant and animal is basically an organ, one part of the whole living organism that is Yavimaya. The elves of Yavimaya are an ancient and long-lived people who, until recently, so this is changing, lived in total harmony with the forest. Once the elves were the planners of Yavimaya. It was they who devised the nested rings of living defenses, siege works that protected the island. It was elves who imagined the marker and signal insects that alerted every Yavimayan to the presence of enemies. Forced by the raging spirit of the elemental Multani to leave, the Yavimayan elves have lost more than just their home. They've lost a part of themselves. While pockets of Yavimayan refugees exist across Dominaria, the largest faction is led by Maria. These elves live on the outskirts of Yavimaya, maybe they want to go back or something, near the ruins of Krug, and cling to the belief that one day soon, they will be allowed to re-enter their ancestral home. But Maria is learning about technology. Maybe she is now curious, as she has always lived in the forest, about what happened outside, and now she is creating these artifacts or learning about them, so that's interesting because maybe she will change Yavimaya a lot. The Phyrexians are hideous amalgamations of flesh and machine parts. They are one of the worst scourges of the multiverse, spreading from plane to plane like a disease, butchering people and reassembling them into new Phyrexians. Their predecessors have already tested themselves against the people of Dominaria. Now the terrible Praetor Shieldred leads a new invasion, and she is determined to succeed where others have failed. During the first Phyrexian invasion, the plane's inhabitants banded together to form the Coalition, an alliance that spanned a myriad of species, peoples and nations. It remains to be seen whether the denizens of Dominaria can unite in such a manner again. We know that they did. Shieldred does not intend to conquer Dominaria with brute force alone. Across the plane, her agents have kidnapped hundreds of people, planeswalkers, and surgically altered their bodies and brains. Once completed, they were returned whence they'd come, unaware of what had happened. When they receive a specific signal, the Phyrexian implants on their brain will activate, compelling them to act according to their master's dark will. More than just a twisted recruitment process, this tactic sows paranoia and fear throughout the ranks of the enemy. Legit. After all, anyone could be an agent of the enemy. Everyone. So that was it for this Planeswalkers guide. I hope you now know how to navigate Dominaria, and let me know what you found most interesting and whether I missed some card tidbits around this set.